All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Dustin Singer here with Dustin Buys Houses. He is a good friend of mine. We work out together. We talk business. We've also done business together, which is great. Thanks for having you, man.
Thanks for having me, Bryan.
Oh, yeah, I'd fuck that up. Thanks for coming on, man. That's what I meant. So, yeah, I mean, we've known each other for what, how long now?
5 years.
Yeah. So we started out, did some remodeling for you, and it's kind of gone on from there. We've definitely talked a lot of business and seen each other grow over the last years. I know your stuff's kind of transitioned a little bit, right? In the beginning, you were mostly flips, correct?
Mostly flips, all flips.
Yeah. And then you started getting into the buy and hold?
Yes.
First?
No, second.
Okay. So what did you do for second? Yeah, so it was flips, and then what did you transition into?
To buy and holds.
Okay.
BRRRRs specifically. Back to flips.
Yeah. As the market shifted.
As the market shifted.
Right. So that's a great point too. I think a lot of people need to understand when they listen to this, when you're in the real estate game and paying attention to the market, knowing when to transition. What are some key indicators in the market that make you shift your business model, right?
So really in 2022, the BRRRR method worked really well. We had a low interest rate environment. We were getting good appraisal numbers. Rents were on the rise. So everything led to more profitable deals from BRRRRing. We were essentially making mini flip profits on a rental property, which was insane.
That's the dream deal.
Dream deal.
Yep.
Yeah. Tax free. And then in 2023, when the interest rate environment started to change, on top of that, rents stabilized or even went down a little bit. And then LTVs were coming down on refinance. The BRRRR model didn't make as much sense,
Correct.
Especially for in our market when we're sub 250 on most of our rental properties.
Unless you're willing to park, 10, 15, like we've always talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that gets complicated, right? So that limits how many deals you can do a year. That limits your scalability. That also, extends your exposure. So I think an interesting thing too, we've always talked about is like, as we've grown, your problems become, okay, when you first start out, it's sales, generate revenue. Then it becomes, okay, how do I shield some of this revenue from tax purposes? And you kind of touched upon that a little bit. So how do you use the rentals to offset your flips in the tax realm?
So the point that we're at now, we have decent sized rental portfolio.
Which is how many?
I think we're up to like 34 or something like that.
And these are and I know you and you're a super conservative guy. So you could have stretched that to 100 if you wanted to. But these are 34 extremely healthy deals, correct?
Extremely healthy deals. Yes. Like good neighborhoods, good school districts, they all cash flow.
Deep in equity.
Gotcha. Yeah, very deep in equity. Essentially, we treated all of our rental properties as flips.
Correct.
So we had good spreads in all of them.
All yours are fully remodeled.
I'd say 90% of them are fully remodeled. The ones that are not fully remodeled are 80% remodeled.
Yep.
Where we went in and did the basics. We were real big on getting mechanicals out of the way. All of our mechanicals are newer, lowering CapEx expenses.
Yep.
A true, I don't want to say passive, but true, somewhat passive portfolio that provides good cash flow. Mm-hmm. But also now we're at the point where we can use those depreciation benefits to offset future flipping and wholesaling income.
And when you're talking about benefits, or the benefits to the depreciation can be looked at as you can take it all at once or you can extend it out, right?
That's a good question. I don't exactly know the answer to that. Generally, what we would do was, now in 2022, we didn't have this problem at all because we were buying so many that it was almost like
everyone was just buying everything.
Yeah. So the model kind of now is you can take, we'll call it 2 or 3 properties a year and accelerate. We accelerate the first 5 years, right off the bat. That gets us the massive depreciation to offset the active income, while still holding the rest of the depreciation benefits over a longer period of time.
Yeah. And I think because a lot of people, when they struggle, when they get into real estate, they don't understand cash flow. So you think, okay, I'll buy some rental properties and yada, yada. And like you said, the CapEx, I'm big into that too. So my rental properties, I want to make sure I got new windows, new roof, new furnace, new AC. Other than that, it's all cosmetics for us because
Right.
we understand construction. We're in a little bit better of a space. Um, when you're talking in regards to, thinking that, oh, you're going to make all this money in rentals, I think that's a myth, right? I mean, like you can make some money, but it's not going to be overnight.
For the BRRRR model, no.
Right.
No. I mean, again, I keep referencing 2022.
Correct.
Yes, there was a lot
We
of
were
money
all
made.
crushing it back then.
Yeah.
In the BRRRR model.
Yeah.
100%.
In a standard balanced market, which is what we're kind of leaning towards now.
Correct.
No, I mean, it is a long-term play.
Yep.
Of course there's a model to throw lipstick on pigs. But really you're kicking, in my opinion, an inevitable can
Big can.
down
Of
the
expensive construction.
road. An expensive,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Construction is what defies everything.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the reason why I got into the game, even in construction, because I'm like, okay, if I hold the cards of construction, I'm at least holding a powerful set of cards, right?
Right.
I can control costs, I can control how things operate. But in a lot of people in regards, they're not able to do that. They have to, go out, find some people. And we've all struggled finding people, and we've all been burned by contractors. And, we've all had these issues growing over the years. And that's a tough part, especially when you're trying to keep a house that has like real strict budgets on the BRRRR model. Because if you go $15,000 over on the BRRRR model, you ain't making nothing.
Not today.
Yeah, you're making less than nothing. You're gonna be parking money in that.
You're
deal.
parking money.
Yeah, because I've even seen it too. So I did 7 or 8 BRRRRs this year, and I had problems on 2 of them on appraisals. Came in low appraisal. I had to park 15 grand. I remember we talked about it a couple times. And when you get that, you're like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm stuck at this point. Like I invested money into it, I own it, I paid interest payments, I gotta pay this guy back. And it puts you in a mindset of where you almost can't think logically. You have to think emotionally and just either come up with the money and park it and move on. So do you have, for your rental portfolio, do you have an exit plan in mind as like you're going to rotate certain units every 7 years or 10 years or 15, or you have certain ones you're just going to plan on keeping forever?
So we're definitely going to keep some forever. I think one of the things that we started to look at specifically last year was this whole concept of return on equity. And the return on equity theory is essentially the cash flow that I'm currently making on the property. What is the return that I'm getting on that versus the equity that's parked there?
Right.
So you need to be, and of course, there's some tax implications involved with this, right?
Meaning what?
Well, so the tax implications, like in order to harness that equity, if I have
Oh, being like another sell or another refinance.
right, I have to.
Gotcha.
Well, no, refinance doesn't count because that's tax free.
Yep.
But if I want to harness the
line of credit or something like that.
yeah, the 20% or more equity that I have in that property, now I have a sell situation. In that situation, you're going to have depreciation recapture, and you're going to have some type of capital gains. If you've held the property for more than a year, it's short term, which is great. But so we're taking that into consideration, obviously, on the ones that we do decide to sell. But we're kind of looking at it as, hey, if I have $60,000 worth of equity parked in a property, and versus, maybe that property, and this has a lot to do with the debt that's on it. If I have a 7% note on that property, I'm only cash flowing a lower amount than the rest of my portfolio. Can that equity better be served in, for example, marketing dollars? If I'm getting a 4x return on my marketing dollars, for round numbers, we'll just say 50 grand in equity. That 50 grand is essentially worth 200,000.
Correct.
So that's one of the things that we're evaluating now, is that especially like as of last year, we were like parking a little bit of money. We're just having, slimmer deals where we really started to realize, hey, this money right now in the point, I mean, I'm 34 years old. I don't plan on stopping until minimum 50. And even then, I don't know if I have it in me. Can I make more money on this money today than leaving that in there?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great way to look at some things, because I think a lot of times people don't look at their investments as how, okay, can I take that, reinvest the money back and reinvest it and flip it again? Because essentially the business that we're in, all we're doing is turning money, and I think for a lot of people, it seems extremely sexy, but rentals aren't the sexiest thing in the world. Short term. Yeah. I mean, what's your average when you referenced the cash flow a few times, and just to tell people what that kind of is. I mean, so when you evaluate your rentals, you'll say, okay, I'm going to have a mortgage at, let's just say round numbers, $1,000. and I'm going to charge $2,000 in rent. But people are going to be like, oh, you're making $1,000 a month. That doesn't necessarily break down to $1,000 a month, right?
No, I would say it never does.
Right. So how does it break down for you whenever you analyze a deal to where you're like, okay, I'm going to net $200 to $300 or $200 to $500, which is the average that is probably consistent, right?
Yeah. So this is hot topic amongst people. How do you?
And that's why I want to bring it up.
Yeah.
Those tend to disagree.
Yeah. So we both do have plenty of acquaintances that will tell me I cash flow $500 a month per door.
I agree with you. I call bullshit.
I do too. Do we have some properties to cash flow that? Absolutely. Those were home run deals.
I have one or two.
Yeah.
I have mine.
So the way that we do it is we're looking at gross rent minus PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. And then we're evaluating a 10% reduction for repairs and vacancy. And then depending on the property, we may even allocate a little bit to CapEx. Now, I will be honest with you, we don't, on properties we do a full-blown renovation on, I'm not allocating anything to CapEx off the bat because we're not going to see a lot of those numbers for
long time.
Hopefully 20 years.
Yeah. Because it's fixed.
It's fixed. Yeah. The reason why we're not calculating it in is because 15, 20 years from now, I have options, right? I can sell that house. I can refinance it. I could do so many different things that for me, it doesn't make sense to budget that money now and take it out of my cash flow. But repairs and vacancies are a real thing.
Very.
Yeah.
Turnovers, real thing.
Turnovers, real thing.
Real thing.
So yeah, I mean, you have, let's say 25% of your portfolio that needs a couple grand worth of turnover work in 1 year. I mean, that wipes out.
Yeah, even if you have 25 properties that turn over at $2,000, it's big dough. That better be sitting there, ready to deploy. Yeah, and I think another misconception too, and I tell a lot of people this, is even when you do the BRRRR model, they don't know because they're used to a conventional mortgage, right? You get your insurance, all that stuff's included in that. That is not the case whenever you refinance. No. That is your note only, not including interest, or I'm sorry, it's not including your taxes or any of that stuff. No. And I think people do not understand that at all.
I get hit with a $25,000 insurance bill once a year.
That too.
Our one. Real estate taxes, I think we paid $70,000 last year. That is a twice a year thing. Right. So if I don't have that $35,000 when that's due.
Sitting making sure that it's ready to go.
Ready to go.
100%.
Yeah. Not robbing Peter to pay Paul.
The penalties are enormous.
Yeah. They can be.
Because I've seen that get kicked down the can too. Is where you just start, we'll toss a little at it. Just, let that go away a little bit. And then it just keeps piling up.
I listened to a presentation recently at one of my mastermind events, and the topic of the presentation was the best way to a massive passive income is a massive active income. And they were specifically referring to generating revenue through sales and marketing, feeding your business first, so the operating expenses that it takes to keep going, feeding our personal accounts.
Almost like profit first, right?
Yeah, very. Yeah. I never got through that whole book, but yeah, probably pretty similar. And then that wealth bucket, which is, I mean, at the end of the day, BRRRRs are in the wealth bucket.
Oh yeah.
That is the last bucket that should be getting filled.
100%.
So, and last year, like I said, we made that mistake of thinking, hey, everything's got to be a rental. And what happened at the beginning of this year? Now we're cash poor. Yeah. Now we're trying to run, I think we have 10 renovations right now. We have 4 or 5 more under contract to buy. Right. And we're still catching up from those losses from, Q3 and Q4 2023.
Right, because you parked a lot of dough. There was the same thing we talked about through COVID. I mean, I was cash poor as like humanly possible. And we scaled out of just pure necessity, like just trying to stay alive. Now, that's the kind of difference in our game, right? Of like why I switched a little bit years ago into residential remodeling, because if you had a crew, let's say you have a full-time crew, you have workman's comp, you got all these other overhead expenditures, how many times have you actually ever hit a budget correctly? And you've been seasoned. I mean, you've done what, over 50 flips?
Yeah, we're probably approaching 100.
Probably 100.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've done a bunch. How many times now, often, or even in your first few years, did you actually hit budget correctly?
In the first few years, not often.
That's what I mean.
Now we're normally within, I'd say
It's
10%
really
worst
good.
case.
It's really good.
Yeah, very rarely. We've had a few that
Yeah.
I've lost my ass on.
100%.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
100%.
That damn one in Peters Township will continue to haunt me.
I thought that was going to be a winner.
So I thought
really
that was going to
did.
be a home run.
I was shocked by that. I really was. And I'm usually, I don't get too shocked anymore. But that kind of showed that like the do it simple model just doesn't work all the time. Even though you redid a lot of the stuff that didn't get any value, like the sewer line and all the stuff, you know what I mean? You did a lot of work to that like went unnoticed. I should say.
Totally unnoticed.
I should say.
Totally unnoticed. And
by a consumer.
That is, everyone, I think focuses on the cosmetics, which is 100% important.
Yeah.
But when you neglect the necessity of basic mechanical systems, you are not going, if you're selling, you're not going to get past a home inspection.
Right.
If you are renting, you're going to be in for a world of hurt.
Yep.
In maintenance and repairs.
Yep. Yeah. And that was always kind of the model, right? Is like, if you do in-house and you have an in-house team, we have a team of 8, 9, I think, and our workman's comp's 29,000 a year, and then our insurance is like another 12. So you're at $42,000 in insurance, and then you have all that the guys and everything that comes with it. If you're not hitting budgets in your flips, if you have an in-house team, you're bleeding out.
Oh, for in-house on flips?
Yeah. You're hemorrhaging out.
Hemorrhaging.
Because I think people look at that and they're like, well, I'll just formulate a team. I'm like, it doesn't cash flow, because you're not like, when I do residential remodeling, I'm cash flowing every week, or I hit benchmarks up front where I can, or you set it up, you take a third, and a third, and you're mitigating some of your risk in the deal. Because I think me and you both are very similar, and we want to mitigate our risk. We don't love taking unnecessary risk when not needed. We'll take it, but like if we can figure it out and strategically plan it, we're both very similar. Like, okay, we'd rather not, scale ultimately. Because I think the new hot. Let's just say it, right. The new hot thing's the race to 100 units, or now it used to be 100 units. Now it's 500 units. So now it's a race to 500 units or 1,000 units, and that comes with a massive amount of complications. I mean, it's a massive team with massive overhead and a million moving parts.
Yeah. I mean, my personal opinion on in-house teams for flipping specifically, not remodeling, but for flipping specifically, is that from what I've seen, it has forced people to buy deals they normally wouldn't buy if they were using subcrews. Because if you have idle time in a flipping business with an in-house team, you just did a flip for 50 grand, but you have an idle team sitting.
Yeah.
Did you really make 50?
No, I think the books are cooked. Yeah. I don't think you have true actual understanding of what's going on, and it's even really hard for us. I mean, because, we have our guys clock into a system and it's connected to our software, which then it goes into the job. But then if they don't click on the cost code that they're in that day, it just goes to a builder trend flat rate. It doesn't go to like what they did that day. So you have numbers, you might get to the end of a remodel and you might have 197 hours, but I have no idea where they went to.
Right.
I have no idea.
Right.
I just know that at the top, I might have made a margin of X and then a net is Y, So that's a really tough part about having the in-house team, especially on your flips, because you need to know your numbers.
Yeah, you got to be dialed in on, and it brings up another side of the street where that a lot of people play the game of the private money game with, I personally feel nice and comfortable and I sleep well at night when I know that every single dollar is accounted for a specific property.
Yeah.
If it's idle or if there's a little bit of muddiness in the water of like where this money is going, where are we paying? Little overlap. Yeah.
Gets dangerous.
It gets very dangerous because it's very hard to allocate true profitability numbers.
It's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible because you're not actually charging yourself that money back whenever you use it for something else. So you're not getting true numbers.
Right.
And I always, early on when we started flipping, it wasn't as bad. I never did 10 at a time or anything like that, but I would do 2 at a time. You manage a interest payment each month, $3,000, let's just call it. But when I started getting into new construction, we got like into 1.6 million dollars in loans, and you're like 22,000 a month. You're like, holy shit, dude. But so my look on it is, and that's kind of why we went more of the pre-sold custom route in new builds, is because that payment freaked me out after a while. Like I did it for a bunch of years in flips, but when it started hitting new builds, it freaked me out because I couldn't think logically. I would only think emotionally about trying to get this interest payment off of me. So I'm like fire selling properties, I'm price cutting them and doing all, and like, that was a big driving factor for me in regards to how we started doing our business a little bit differently, because that money, it's yours. It really is yours. When you sign for it, it's yours. When that money gets deposited into your account, that's your. You can go buy a Lambo if you want to go buy a Lambo, or you should do the
Depending
right
on how
thing,
it's structured, yeah, sure.
like
Yeah.
because if that property goes belly up or whatever, you go belly up. I mean, you're still responsible to pay all that money back.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that, people should understand when you get into real estate and they talk about, oh, you don't need a dollar of your own money. And that's true in very small cases,
Yeah.
very small cases. I think, and we've all been through the masterminds and we've all gone down that route in our careers. And listen, I love masterminds. When you get into the right mastermind and you start getting around the right people, relationships is an amazing thing. I think you would agree.
Oh, yeah.
You're in some higher level ones now, right? And it's mostly centered on real
Yeah.
estate specific.
Yeah. So you and I were in the same
Yep.
one. That was very general.
That was business general.
business general.
Yeah.
A lot of pros to it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in real estate specific now. It's been a game changer.
In regards to how you view your business,
How I view my business, and if you think about the role that we're supposed to sit in as the owner, leader, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
of the company, CEO, our main objective is like R&D and idea creation.
correct.
So it is much easier to, and I'm not saying that we sit in those seats 100%. I know that I don't.
I sure don't either.
Yeah. But my objective is to be able to take in all these ideas and information from all these different people that I'm able to gain at a mastermind event, and then decide which ones I am or am not going to apply to the
100%.
business. I'm willing to pay for that as opposed to taking 10 years to figure it out alone.
Yeah. I think, I think that's a big aspect that, because masterminds are a hot topic right now, right? And everybody's kind of getting in that coaching game, which is great. If you're in it for the right reasons, that's awesome. Listen, I'm the same way. I'd rather pay $20,000 to get to the finish line faster than bleeding out for 2 years, because we all know what that feels like. It's an agonizing, and most of the time you'll burn out in that 2 years and just quit. I think there was a lot of times for both of us, because when we first started, we were all swinging hammers. We all swung hammers. We all were manual labor in it. We all wore a tool belt.
Worst days ever.
Huh?
Worst days ever.
Worst days ever. For sure. But that's how you have to start. I don't think there's any other way you should really start. I'm being serious. I think if you don't understand the process from start to finish and get your feet wet on a few, you're doing yourself a massive disservice.
No, I agree. It's funny. I was just telling someone the other day. I know just enough about everything
To be super
just be
dangerous.
super
Yeah.
dangerous. I'm not saying I'm an expert in all of it, but I know just enough to be able to see if you're doing your job correctly.
100%. I think about that now in new construction too, because we're getting ready to approach over 60 builds, and when people start talking about it now, or clients come in and they'll be like, this builder told me they could do it for 350. I'm like, bullshit, bullshit. Because I look at my numbers, I'm like, I built that for 411. There's no way you're selling that plus making your margin, plus paying your overhead. And that's just, that's not possible. So you're either making me work to the bottom, or you're just trying to see, what we believe and what we don't believe.
Right.
But I think early on, when we were able to put in the work and do all that stuff and start to understand, how to deal with subs and how to deal with, the process of buying it and selling it, because there's a lot of issues, right? So I think early on when I did flips and worked with Urban and all them, which was a great learning experience. Sewer cameras were just starting to become a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this was about 2017, 16, 17 range. Before then, I don't think I knew one person that ever cameraed a sewer, ever. Then all of a sudden, like, it became a thing. Then all of a sudden you're getting beat up for $6,000-7,000 a house. And if you got 30 houses in queue,
It's a lot.
you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
And like that was a kind of an eye-opening thing of like how the markets are now. Like everybody does the sewer line. It's almost a guaranteed contingency whenever you go to sell, right? That you have to think about.
Well, and that brings up a good point actually, because there was, like 2019, 2020, there was, I'll do a flip for 25K profit, 30K profit. But and if you're, so there's two different routes of thinking on this, right? If you are doing direct to seller, buying off market, there's different costs to go into actual real net profit. If you are someone that just buys off wholesalers, buys off the MLS, you really don't have any overhead, maybe 25, 30K, that's fine. If you are operating an actual business of acquiring properties, then now you're talking, there's a marketing cost associated to every single deal. So I'm looking at a P&L by class. So I'm talking like all my properties are laid out. How much did that specific property make? I really had to be thinking about, there was a marketing cost associated with this. There's a sales commission associated with this. And then there is general overhead that's associated with this net profit.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing because me and you both love the numbers side of it. You're better at it than me. I've just done a good job. It's just getting scaling on it. But for us, it's the same thing, right? Because we're looking at our projections when we're putting overhead costs into our budget. When we're building, it's like we'll say, okay, we project to do 15 houses this year. But what if we don't? Like that's a thing that I always think about too. And I talk with my office manager and I'm like, okay, well, we're allocating $7,000 in the budget for overhead, but like, is that enough? Like, cause our true marketing expense and all of our other stuff is crazy high, so that's a number that I track monthly when we get our books reconciled as our overhead number. I'm tracking the percentages of like, okay, how much is it going up? Like, what are we dividing that against? And that was the reason why we did almost a two gang business, because, and I've said this before, like our model is we're not out to set the world on fire in remodeling. We're out to do great work, kitchens, baths, basements, things that we know. And then that business is supposed to break even the overhead and let the new construction kind of bring it all home. Now, much easier said than done. Seems very simple, but it's not. I mean, when you start getting into, the tens of millions of dollars in what we do our taxes in every year, it's easy to misallocate $10,000. It's easy to make your books look a certain way. It's easy to make these deals look fat and juicy because that's what your ego is telling you want to see. But really, at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, you got to allocate. If you're spending $20,000 a month in marketing, you really need to know what's your cost per call, your cost per lead, your cost per appointment, your cost per actual deal. I mean, how in depth do you track your KPIs on the sales side?
So I'm going to go back to what we were just referring to. To track the actual sales process, there's a couple different variables that you want to be aware of. We have gross leads, net leads, which gross leads essentially gets out all the stuff that like we can't really, there's no way we're going to make money on it. Net lead can mean a different thing to different people. That's pretty much for us, anything that we can possibly monetize in any way, shape, or form is net lead. Then you have appointments scheduled, appointments attended, because you're going to have a fallout right there. Offers made, which should be 100%.
Oh, no, yeah. If you're going on the appointment, you got to make an offer.
Yeah. Then you have contracts signed,
contracts closed,
and then you have contracts closed.
Yep.
When you're evaluating
two very big differences.
Yeah. Because our fallout rate's it's actually decent. It's probably around 15%. And out of that 15%, a lot of that is just from title issues, which we don't have any control over.
Yep.
Seller forgets that they owe a $40,000 mortgage. I don't know how that happens,
Had
but
a ton of title issues in some of our land deals lately, which has held up a lot of deals.
For profitability marketing, that only KPI that really makes sense for those numbers is cost per closed deal, because you're basing essentially, well, there's two. There's cost per closed deal and there's average revenue per deal, especially if you're offering multiple products. So like in a whole, like you guys have new construction and remodeling.
Yep.
We have wholesaling and flipping and in a way rentals as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, a certain average revenue on a wholesale, certain average revenue on a flip. Those two put together, now you have your average cost per deal. Or average revenue per deal. And what it allows you to do is project out your year. So I need to be able to say, hey, out of all the business that we're going to do, I know that a contract costs me this amount of money. Okay. If I say I'm getting X amount of contracts at this amount of money, if I'm only doing wholesale deals, my profit margin is going to be way smaller than when I add flips in. So I need to know, how many flips do I need to add in? When do I need to buy them? When do I need to close by? Now you're talking in like cash conversion cycles and all of that stuff to keep the engine running.
Absolutely. And that cash conversion cycle is, even cash debt cycles and all that other stuff. That's a higher level game.
It is, but that being said, it shouldn't be.
It certainly shouldn't be. I think a lot of people ignore the numbers and want to worry about sales. And that's just not how this game goes. You know, you can keep shoving shit through the pipeline and doing all this stuff. When you're inefficient, you're not understanding your numbers. You could be bleeding out and not understanding that in 3 years you're bankrupt. You just don't know it yet.
Right.
You know, and that was a big thing for us. And you're right, because we'll get asked all the time. They'll be like, all right, well, based on like, especially banks. So banks, when you either want to refi or they want to give you loans, they're always like, well, how much revenue comparison is your new construction to remodeling? I'm like, you fucking kidding me? I'm like, you're talking about selling a $500,000 house to a $40,000 bathroom or a $50,000 or $100,000 kitchen. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, we have 90% new construction, 10% remodeling. You know, profit margins are much different though, you know, in regards to, because the project size, like you said, it's all really relative to the size of the projects. It's all relative to the cash flow of the game. So I think the fascinating thing with a lot of us is we've learned how to run multiple businesses inside of a business. And I think you have to nowadays.
In real estate specifically, yeah.
Even in construction, I think it's because one hand's got to feed the other. Because one of them, you're not getting money quickly. One of them's got to be able to support cash flow.
Right.
So I know over the last, such years, wholesaling's become such a gigantic thing for a lot of people. Not that a lot of people do it well, but so whenever you get a lead in, you're able to look at it from multiple revenue generating ways. So what kind of thought process goes in with you guys when you're deciphering whether you want to wholesale it, you want to rent it, you want to rent it, or you want to flip it?
If we were just talking in regards to, like, let's say it's in our buy box and we're deciding wholesale versus flip. Generally, I want to see if I can even come close to making 30 to 40% of my wholesale fee versus flipping right off of the bat. Like, meaning, let's take our flip profit,
right,
see if we can get about 30 to 40% of that projected, and see if we can get that as a wholesale fee. And if we can, the cash conversion cycle now went from 120 to 160 days down to what, 45 days?
45 days. It's a big deal.
Yeah. And this goes
back. It's a big deal when you start spending big money in marketing.
It is. Yeah. And this goes back to the same topic of, time value of money, right? I can squeeze an extra 20, maybe 30K on the flip.
Work your balls off.
Yeah. Work your balls off. Or I can take the profit today and reinvest that back into marketing to get another 4X return. At that point, it's just compounding money.
100%.
Yeah.
No, I think, even for me early on, right? So, you look at like what's sexy and you're like, flipping houses. We're going to go out and flip a bunch of houses. And oh man. And then listen, there's definitely money to be made, 100%, not to say that there isn't, but I think a lot of people don't analyze and do what's best for the business as opposed to doing what's best for what looks good on Facebook and all the other stuff. Or they think that, flipping a house in certain areas is better than others. And I think, when you're able to look at deals and things from a multi-lens view, you're able to look at how you're looking at it. And that makes you, now you're entering the CEO world. Now you're entering the business, the guy who runs a business world, as opposed to, all right, I just want to do, because I know some guys like, hey man, like you can go flip 2 houses a year and maybe make 80, 90 grand on the side, but you're going to give up a shitload of your time, and that's what we always go back to is like, for us, it was, okay, we knew that staying in our business and swinging a hammer and doing every component of it was unsustainable. So we knew that you got to now buy deeper, got to get better deals. You got to, because now you got to hike. Now you have somebody else's rate on top of there, plus their margin, plus their overhead, So now you got to think a little bit more creative in the sense of, okay, now I'm spending 10, 20, 30, $40,000 a month in marketing. How am I going to get that money back? Because I think it's really cool and sexy when people go, oh, we went out and signed 10 deals. Okay, what are you going to do with them? Right. Because if you flip all 10, in, like you said, best case scenario, you might get all your money back in 120 days.
Right.
Best case.
And that's moving.
That's cooking.
Yeah.
And that's everything falling in line perfectly and da 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 da. That's so you need
what's that leave you? 60-day construction, 30 days on market, 30-day close.
Yeah, that's cooking.
That's best case scenario.
Truly.
Yeah.
And so if it goes 6 months, think about that, So now in that 6 months, you just spent $120,000 in marketing. If you're spending 20 grand a month, so you have to have something out there nowadays to supplement that cash flow. It just has to happen.
Yeah, and one, you already said it. It's the construction component of it just happens to be the product that we're putting out at that specific time. In reality, as a real estate investor, I'm investing cash to get cash. I'm not necessarily investing in the real estate itself. You can do the same thing in crypto. You can do the same thing with stocks. You can do, whatever the case may be. That just happens to be the product that we're offering. But at the end of the day, we should be evaluating our decisions of how can I compound my cash as quickly as possible for the least amount of stress as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great topic because our business through the last couple months with interest rates going crazy and all that stuff, we've incurred a lot more $1 million buyer leads. And full transparency, I mean, I'm a pretty open guy. We've gotten exposed in the last 90 days. We even lost a deal on Friday. It was $1.3 million build, and it was a layup. Again, broke trust. That's the kind of thing that happens because we were not on top of our sales process to the exact T that it needed to be catered for a different clientele we aren't used to. Right. So, now we've rearranged our processes. We've implemented a bunch of things, because we need to be prepared, just like we talked about in the beginning about a market shift. When market shifts, people that have money are still not afraid to spend money. People that are barely on the border, they're going to drop off for the time being. So, that was a real understanding for us in the sense of because we typically do the 6 or I would say 5 to 800 builds, even 5 to 750. We get through them and design pretty good. We got really good at it. We can tailor to that clientele. Man, the needs and necessities and wants of someone in that higher caliber just takes so much more of your time. For instance, now like our design, we track, our design time. We get through the average builds 45 days, 60 days tops, all the way through into contract. You're talking 6 to 7 months on some of these bigger ones. Right. Now, profits, profits not 2 to 3x what these are. That's the crazy thing you have to look at too, right? Is you're putting in so much more effort in design and these efforts to accumulate a dollar that's not equating to the same time you're putting into it. Mm-hmm. But that was a real realization for us in our business is like, okay, oh man, we were not prepared to handle that clientele the way that clientele needs to be handled. Because of the standpoint of it's a lot more decisions. It's a lot longer process. It draws out your money even longer. It draws out your staff. It's they're getting paid hourly. All that stuff's going through. You're not. And those are things you need to accumulate into your deals. Because again, when you talk about knowing your numbers, we look at, and we have a design fee that kind of pays for a little bit of that, but not a lot, not equating that we're going to have 6 months of staff on a design. So those were some changes and variables that we needed to get used to. We entered a new realm of clientele that we weren't really used to because when you talk about the same thing as like we were saying is we're turning dollars, but when you can't turn a dollar for a long time, you're holding on. That dollar is not a dollar by the time it gets turned. No. It's more like a dime.
No,
and I think that's for people that I think it's a really easy thing too over the last couple of years with money being readily available to everybody that people jumped on that too much and they overscaled.
They overscaled and I like to think about it as it's almost like a rubber band, right? When you're stretching out that cash conversion cycle for these long periods of time, right? You're just stretching. That thing's getting thinner and thinner and thinner.
100%.
You're not able to feed the machine, and eventually it's going to snap.
Yes.
And that snapping point sometimes is a shift in the market.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
let's say, for example, we had only focused on, let's say we'd done 100% rental properties last year, and I was parking in $10,000 per property. Now we come into Q1 of 2024, and I have goals I want to hit. We have whatever we want to achieve. Where's the money coming to market?
Correct.
That's all gone now. It's all parked.
Ate it all.
Yeah. Now you have to shift, and now do you start liquidating? Do you start selling? So, from like what you were just saying, that's why like where that balance thing really comes into play of I need these shorter cycle times to make sure that I'm not exposed.
100%. That's our remodeling, and that's your wholesaling, and that's some other areas, because you got to be able to feed the beast, and whenever you feed the beast, it means there becomes a level that your break even is X, and you can't go below that, or you are losing money. You are in a deficit now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is if, we take a lot of ARMs, for people that don't know, that's adjustable rate mortgages. That's what a lot of rental guys do. I mean, that's just what we're offered. You get caught in, what happened with interest rates. You might add a 3. Now it's getting ready to adjust. You might get a 7. That now puts that rental property negative.
Right.
Now you have a decision to make. You either liquidate it all, or you figure out whether you got to raise rents or can raise rents, or what you're going to do.
Right.
So how do you analyze that? Because you're very analytical in the sense with financing with your ARMs, and are you a proponent of the ARMs? Do you like doing that for your rentals?
I mean, it's the only option we really get.
That's the only option.
That's not true. I mean, you can pay additional points to get 30-year fixed.
None of us do it.
No. Well, we know one person that does it, but the issue with that is now you're paying, let's just call it 3 points as opposed to 1. So now you have to take those 2 points and kind of amortize that over the expected life of holding that rental property and actually analyze
Which I don't think anybody does.
No, I don't think anyone's looking at them that deep. But with rental property resets specifically, it goes back to feeding the active machine and then the operating reserves before you feed the wealth bucket. Because if and trust me, I hate idle dollars sitting.
Oh yeah.
But there is a certain amount of idle dollars that absolutely have to sit because, it's not like in 2008 and we haven't really seen what happened the past year or so that we can't even really call that a correction. It sucked, but not that many people were absolutely losing their ass.
Yeah, it's a topic to be discussed, right? Because I think we dodged a recession. I do.
Yeah.
I think we dodged a recession in the sense of that nobody wants truly to have a recession. Now, do we know what's really going on behind the scenes and all the other shit with federal debt and all that? I mean, it's out of control. I totally get that. But from how it affects us standpoint, now even my biggest fear is whenever you guys did really, really well, I did not, because the uncertainty of the market. So materials went crazy. All these other things went crazy. Then stabilization for me in construction is a good thing. I can project because I'm in the commodities market. Like I'm just looking at buying goods. And then, my partner always, told me, you got to look at these houses. They're a 4 squared box that we sell material in. That's all it is. We just sell the things that go in it. So, I know that you had a little bit of a blip this year because of certain aspects of the market and some other stuff. So how do you plan to adjust your goals this year, since it's going to be probably pretty similar to last year? I don't think they're going to drop interest rates any real lower than what they are because of election year. What's your thoughts?
It could be. So the first things first, we're looking at doing more absolutely more flipping than rental property. I mean, rental properties are essentially off the table for this year
because of the BRRRR.
Because of the BRRRR model, because of just depletion of cash. I want those
burn
cash
rates quick as hell.
Yeah. I mean, we have money lent out right now to investors that we thought we were getting back in a couple months. I mean, I got a couple notes that are approaching a year now.
Yep.
And because they're having the same issues, refinance issues.
We talked about that too, because I thought about lending out some of our cash to keep it non-idle, but
Terrible idea
I'm
right
not
now.
doing it. Yeah, I'm not doing it. Yeah, you talked me out of it totally.
Yeah. So 2024, the rental properties are on hold, and I'm done doing private money lending. That is for sure. But I got obsessed with that sexy idea of like passive cash flow. And don't get me wrong, like it does. But then I forgot that I need to feed this machine to keep things going.
Back to the basics.
Back to the basics. Yeah. So we're really looking at establishing as much of a cash flow generating actively business this year. We'll see what happens over this year with interest rates and rents and there's just, again, it's election year. There's so many things. I mean, Israel could bomb who knows what.
Yeah. Things that are way out of our control could affect everything.
And that
100%.
that's
a scary part
of the problem.
Yes, that's
right.
a huge problem.
In 2008, I don't think anyone was sitting there thinking, I'm about to lose everything I have overnight. Because that's how quickly it happened.
It's exactly what happened. Yeah. I mean, we analyzed kind of the same thing in the sense of we were worried, and I brought a lot of my big vendors into our office in the last couple of weeks, and we're like, hey, if interest rates drop and things happen, I need to be on the up and up here. Like I need to be able to prepare and shift our prices or not do as many or scale remodeling a little bit or come at this a different way. Because I think we were all blindsided a little bit in the sense of how it was just the legitimate stop of the country that kind of really put things in a really bad place that didn't recover. For us, even municipalities shutting down and all this, like right now, which is the weirdest thing ever. I mean, the Washington County records and deeds got hacked. So it's been shut down since the 25th. Wow. So I have builds that are getting ready to close in Washington County that can't because they can't record any deeds. And that's been weeks. So these are things that are like, I'm hoping and like we're ready to generate revenue, but can't close because of like the record of deeds. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, it's little things in this game that really make a big difference in the sense of how you need to be ready for all the unknowns that kind of come into it.
Well, and that brings up a really important metric we haven't brought up yet, burn rate.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about that for the tail end of that.
Yeah. So like right now I'm looking at 90-day burn rate. That's our cash.
Can you explain what burn rate is?
Yeah. So burn rate is essentially the amount of time it would take to deplete your cash reserves based off of your operating expenses. And this is assuming that no revenue is coming in.
At all.
At all.
Yes.
Yes. So for us right now, we're operating on a 90-day burn rate. I'm starting to get very uncomfortable with that number.
That's a scary number.
That is a scary number.
My burn rate through COVID was 7 weeks. I swear to you, it was the craziest thing ever. Yeah, it was. And you're right though. So how are you analyzing burn rate in regards to your goals of 2024?
It's one of those balance things, right? We have to spend money to make money.
100%. So if you don't mind me asking, what are you spending in marketing a month? If you don't want to tell anybody, that's fine.
I know, I don't care. For this year, we're going to be around 25, 30 grand a month.
Okay.
So when we did like our pro forma for this year, right? We for those listening, a pro forma is essentially we're projecting all of our revenue that's going to close this year.
Yes.
That does not include if we buy a flip in November. We're not making
spills over.
That spills over. Correct. Yeah. We're not making that money this year. So, talking cash conversion cycle, that cutoff's right around September.
Yes.
Anything from September on, we're not making
That's
money.
how we are. Anything we sell after July, you count it towards next year.
Right.
I mean, you're going to get a little bit of the revenue, but you ain't getting the whole caboodle.
Right. Right. Yeah. For you guys. Yeah. For us, we're getting nothing.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps you analyze where your burn rate needs to be because you can project when certain expenses are coming out of your operating accounts, like for rental properties, taxes, and the things we were just talking about, so that I can say, hey, in August, we need to watch because we have $60,000 in real estate taxes coming out. If my burn rate at the time is 60 days in that operating account and I have 5 roofs go out, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, you're huge trouble.
Yeah. So we're trying to get a little bit more conservative with that stuff while also recognizing the fact that money needs to be spent. It just needs to be spent in a smart way.
And you have to think about burnout rate a lot different when you're flipping more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're only flipping, that burn rate can get very, very, very low.
Very quick.
When you don't have those little tiny wins. You know, our average wholesale fees in Pittsburgh are not that high.
No, we don't, because we're not wholesale $1 million properties.
No.
If and a lot of people, and this is just to be honest, everyone that's throwing out wholesales, a lot of them are shit to shit. Like it just is what it is.
We have shitty ones.
100%. But but somebody's willing to buy that.
Yeah. You know, have we cracked 30 plus wholesale fees in Pittsburgh? Absolutely. They're properties that we would buy. But those are the ones that I'm deciding, hey, right now for cash conversion cycle for burn rate, it makes more sense for me to take this 30K right now as opposed to maybe 60, 70K over the next maybe 180 days. You know, but a lot of them aren't like that for wholesaling. I mean, a lot of them, we're pushing these junk properties that ARV is $100,000. You're not going to crack a $20,000 or $30,000 wholesale fee on that, unless you're literally robbing this seller of every penny they have.
100%. And that's not what the goal is.
No, for us specifically, no, that goes against my values as a human being. It's not right.
Yeah, we want to always create a win-win.
Right.
You know, great conversations. I think we touched upon a lot of great topics in the sense of, you know, if you're getting into this game, you need to know your numbers. You need to understand risk. You need to not overscale. I think that's a big one that we can take away from it. And then as you keep growing, I mean, there's a lot of great content inside of this as you grow or you start. I appreciate you for coming on, Dustin.
Thanks, man.
All right, buddy.